Good morning, everybody. I'll call this meeting to order for the Transit Management and Rail Management Committee's joint meeting. I first want to welcome Wynette Reed, City Manager for the City of Goodyear, representing the city on the Transit Management Committee. So welcome. Glad you're here this morning.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, Pat, I will turn it over to you to call the roll.
City of Avondale, Shirlene Pinella or Ron Corbin. City of Buckeye, Dan Cotterman or James Shano.
John Willett, in for Buckeye.
Thank you. City of Chandler, Ryan Peters.
Present.
City of El Mirage, Autumn Grooms. Town of Fountain Hills, Dave Trimble.
Here.
Town of Gilbert, Mary Goodman.
Here.
City of Glendale, Kevin Phelps.
Here.
City of Goodyear, Wynette Reed.
Here.
Maricopa County, Elijah Levon. City of Mesa, Chris Brady.
Here.
City of Peoria, Chris Hallett. City of Phoenix, Mario Paniagua.
Here.
Town of Queen Creek, Bruce Gardner or Heather Wilkie.
Heather Wilkie, here.
City of Scottsdale, Mark Milanchenko.
Here.
City of Surprise, Tracy Montgomery.
Tracy Montgomery here.
Thank you. And City of Tempe, Andrew Ching. He's not present yet. Chair, we're ready to proceed.
Okay, all right, thank you, Pat. Just a reminder to keep if you're virtual, to keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking. If you need to ask a question or make a comment, just feel free to chime in and let me know. That'll move us to public comment. The public will be provided with an opportunity at this time to address the committees on non-agenda items and all action agenda items for the joint RPTA and Valley Metro or the Transit Management Committee and Rail Management Committee meeting agendas. Up to 3 minutes will be provided per speaker. Do we have any public speaker cards today?
No, not today.
No, we do not. Okay. Well, that takes us to item 2, the Chief Executive Officer's report. I'll turn it over to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee members. I have just a couple of quick updates today. Slide, please. Since we last met, we have been a little bit busy hosting a mega event here in downtown Phoenix. We reported to the board at our last meeting, but I wanted to give this committee an update on the success of the Super Bowl festivities. On February 4th through 5th and February 9th through 12th, the Valley Metro team, together with our partners at the City of Phoenix, including the transit staff, but also City of Phoenix police and fire departments, plush national assistants that joined us throughout the week to ensure a safe and enjoyable experience. We carried about 250,000 riders. We exceeded our normal ridership by 60%. The festivities and the experience for our customers was excellent. Our team did a wonderful job. They made it look easy. It is not easy. This took over a year of planning and careful coordination, not just from our communication staff, our operations and maintenance teams, but also all of our Valley Metro staff who were out volunteering. We put in over 1,400 volunteer hours. It really was an all hands on deck experience. We heard feedback from our customers throughout those days. We heard, it's so clean, it's so safe, it's so easy to use. There are so many people out here helping us. Thank you very much for that. It was a wonderful experience for our visitors, and I hope also a wonderful experience for many of our area residents who don't normally interact with the Valley Metro system. The event was made easier by a partnership that we developed with Phoenix Convention Center, the Arizona Super Bowl Host Committee, and Downtown Phoenix, Inc., that allowed our customers to use their event tickets via the NFL One Pass or their print tickets as their light rail fare. This helped us secure passenger revenue from those customers, but created an easier, seamless experience for our customers. This is just one part of what we're doing to try to attract riders to the system and embed light rail service into the many event and cultural venues that we have across the valley. Next slide, please. Before the energy and enthusiasm from Super Bowl dissipates, just last week we announced our next in a series of ticket partnerships with Phoenix Rising. Starting on April 1st, soccer fans can use their Phoenix Rising ticket as their light rail ticket to travel to the new stadium that's being constructed right now in the city of Phoenix. And I know I cannot wait to board with my soccer fan family and travel to a Phoenix Rising game. This concludes my report. We'll do a quick preview of our next meetings. We will be here tomorrow for the AFS meeting and back for a full board on March 16th. I think we've got some corrections to the April board meeting dates, but TMC RMC is scheduled for April 5th, and we'll have to update the board meeting date. It's not quite in that rapid succession. Any questions I may answer?
Does anyone have any questions for Jessica?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. It's very exciting for light rail at a time where we're still trying to recover from the effects of the pandemic and the ridership. And so hopefully this Super Bowl and the Phoenix Rising ticket sponsorship will go a long way to help us with that. So thank you for your efforts with that. That'll take us to item 3, the consent agenda. Does any committee member have any questions or would like to pull an item from the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion on the consent agenda? So moved. Have a motion for approval.
Second.
And I have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Please say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. That takes us to item 4, the 2023 Valley Metro Federal Public Transportation Agenda. For a presentation, I'll turn it back to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask Alexis Amron-Kinsey, a Director of Governmental Affairs, to provide an update on this item.
Good morning, afternoon. Mr. Chair, members, this item we bring to the board, before the board every year. The purpose of the federal agenda is to bring attention to the importance of federal funding and transit investment opportunities for the region. This year's agenda, I would call your attention to a couple of federal grant opportunities we will be seeking out, specifically the low and no emissions vehicle and infrastructure program, as well as the bus and bus facilities. The purpose of the Low-No program is to support the transition of our nation's transit fleet to the lowest polluting and most energy-efficient transit vehicles. The competitive grant program provides funding for the purchase or lease of zero emissions and low emission transit buses, including acquisition, construction, and leasing of required supporting facilities. Valley Metro continues to work on and finalize our transit fleet transition plan. This plan is currently identifying current and future power needs at facilities, including steps for beginning the electrification and expected duration of any necessary enhancements that align with the FTA requirements. The purpose of the bus and bus facilities competitive program is to assist in the financing of bus and bus facility capital projects, including replacing, rehabilitating, purchasing, or leasing buses or related equipment, and rehabilitating, purchasing, construction, or leasing bus-related facilities. Valley Metro envisions the need for a West Valley Transit and paratransit facility, as well as enhancement to our East Valley facilities in Mesa in the future. Development or enhancements of these facilities will rely on the bus and bus facilities discretionary grant program. Valley Metro may also seek additional funding through the annual congressional appropriations process, which includes the congressionally directed community project funding, or earmarks, as we know them as earmarks. Submission, particularly for both of these funding opportunities, April 13th of this year. So those are the two items I wanted to make sure to point out on this agenda, which has been a little bit different from our annual agendas. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Alexis. Are there any questions on this item? Okay, we have no questions.
Great, thank you.
This is an action item, I believe, for approval. So if there are no questions or are there comments for discussion, does anyone have a motion to approve this item? So moved.
Second.
Oh, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Item 5 is an item presented for information only, travel expenditures and solicitations. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. No action is required on this item. And item 6 is our report on current events and suggested future items. Does anyone have any requests for future agenda items or updates? All right, seeing none, that takes us to the announcement on our next meeting, which will be Wednesday, April 5th at 11 a.m. And we adjourn the joint meeting of the Transit Management Committee and Rail Management Committee, taking us to the Transit Management Committee only meeting. So we'll convene Transit Management Committee and go straight to the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions or would want to pull any items from the consent agenda? Does anyone have a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
A motion to approve and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Item 2 is an item for contract award on administrative broker services demand response. I'll turn it over to you, Jessica, for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I would invite Tom Young, our Director of Accessible Transportation Services, to the podium. Mr. Young will address both items 2 and 3.
Thank you, Jessica. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the TMC. I'm going to provide some background and information actually on the next 2 items on the agenda together, since they too relate. So just as a brief refresher, a couple years ago, it seems like it's taken forever, but a couple years ago, we made a decision to change the service delivery model for demand response services. The primary change was to put all administrative services of both our demand response services, Ride Choice and Paratransit, under one administrative entity. This entity will be responsible for actually providing all scheduling and reservation services for both Ride Choice and for the ADA Paratransit. Under the Ride Choice program, it's a less restrictive program. It's an alternative to our ADA program. And we have 11 jurisdictions that participate in this program. The ADA Paratransit program is required through the Americans with Disabilities Act and is at minimum required service within 3/4 of a mile of all fixed route service. We do have some communities that have chosen to provide the services beyond the 3/4 mile. Now, under the administrative services contract, the broker is also required to contract directly with all of the Ride Choice providers. We currently have 16 Ride Choice providers, and the broker carries the contracts with those. So under the administrative broker contract, we're asking for authority to award the contract. And under the actual administration, which is the reservations and scheduling portion of it, the total contract award is just over $54 million. That is for a base 5-year period with 3 one-year extensions for a total of 8 years. In addition, the cost of the actual service, so these are the payments to the Ubers and the Lyfts and the other 14 providers that we have, through the same 5-year base program is just over $64 million, bringing the total award to $118,444,593 for the full 8-year term of the contract. The second item on the agenda, which I'll address real quick, is the actual operations and maintenance of the ADA Paratransit service. In developing the model, we chose to contract separately with a contractor to provide the service. The primary reason was to eliminate any conflict of interest between assigning of trips and the actual provision of trips. So we'll have a service broker that actually is working for us to ensure that we're providing the most efficient and effective service possible, while we have a separate operations and maintenance contractor that will be concentrating on quality of service and customer service to the passengers actually boarding. This contractor will be hiring all the operators and maintaining all of the Valley Metro-owned vehicles. So this contract term is a base of 3 years with 3 one-year extensions, not to exceed a 6-year term. And the total cost of the full 6 years is $145,551 or $551,000 and some change. So one of the questions that I've had, and I thought I'd address, we have an 8-year contract on the broker and a 6-year contract on the service provider. We did that purposely to make sure in the future, as contracts go out to bid, we're not making a change for the entire system, that we will be staggering the changes to hopefully help the impact of any change go smoother in the future. At this time, I can answer any questions anybody has.
Are there any questions on item 2 or 3?
Mario, this is Chris Brady.
Yes, Chris.
Thank you. I guess I don't know if it's a question or a comment. I think just one of the comments or observations we might have is that I think, well, as this program grows and we look at it and look at how we make sure this is balanced out by subregion, and making sure those costs are shared proportionally within the subregion versus the whole region, because I know there's a kind of disproportionate use of paratransit, and I think as we grow this across the valley, we need to make sure that maybe we look at it in smaller pieces in the subregion. So I kind of look forward to Valley Metro kind of making that assessment to make sure that the costs are closer to the users or how they're benefiting each community. And maybe that'll be better benefited by looking at the subregion than the whole entire region at itself. So I don't know if staff has any thoughts on that right now, but it's just something down the road I think we'll be looking at and making sure that truly the benefit that communities are receiving are proportionate to the the infrastructure and how these services are built out. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any thoughts from staff on that one?
Sorry. Tom or Ken, do you have any thoughts or responses, or is this something we'd like to follow up on?
I believe we need to follow up on this. I know during the RTAG meeting, it was requested that we look at the cost allocation program, and we are planning to come back in a near future RTAG meeting with that analysis on both the East Side fixed route contract as well as the ADA paratransit because of the change in payment to providers.
So perhaps next month or the following, in April or May, we'll come back to RTAG with an update on this item. I know there was some discussion at RTAG this past month on this topic, and we'll bring the same to TMC RMC. Does that
Thank you very
satisfy your
much.
question for the moment,
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, thank you.
you.
Right on point. Thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on these items? Okay, items 2 and 3 are for action. Do we need to do 2 separate actions? Okay. Why don't we do item 2, which is a mouthful there on the recommendation. Okay, can I get a motion on the recommendation that's before us?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, that motion passes unanimously. It takes us to action for item 3, the ADA Paratransit Operations and Maintenance Services Contract Award. And we have a new mouthful on the screen. Can I get a motion for this item? A motion
Second.
and a second. All right, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Item passes unanimously. Item 4 is authorization to issue a request for proposals for West Valley Transit Services. Jessica, I'll turn it over to you to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I will address this item. We currently deliver bus service to West Valley via a fixed route contract that's currently held by National Express. That includes express service, the Grand Avenue Limited, the Avondale Zoom, and the Peoria Pogo circulator routes. The current contract with National Express expires June 30th of 2024. We have chosen not to exercise contract option years on this contract, and instead this morning we're coming to this committee to request approval and advancement to the board to issue a request for proposals for service in West Valley. The new RFP would include a contract to provide fixed route services, which could include local circulator, local route, and express route services, but also demand responsive services. I would like to note this is a change in our current operating model for West Valley. And instead of delivering para and demand responsive separate from bus, this allows us to place each of those mobility solutions under the same contract and deliver mobility services to West Valley communities that we think will be a better fit for the mobility needs of those communities. As we look ahead over the projected cycle of this contract, part of our future planning is also the location and development of an operations and maintenance facility in West Valley. At the beginning of the contract term, I want to be clear, this facility wouldn't yet be available. So we'll have to work with those facilities very likely that we're operating out of today. But this is part of our vision for development of mobility options and transit service across West Valley into the future. We've been having some of these conversations with member cities, and this item was, of course, discussed at RTAG earlier this month. The RFP that we're developing, we would anticipate having a first-year contract estimate of about $7 million. Of course, we would be coming back to this committee with a detailed cost estimate when bids would be received. May I answer any questions about this planned RFP?
Thank you, Jessica. Any questions for Jessica on this item? Okay, hearing none. This is also an action item, so we would need a motion to move this forward.
So moved.
I have a motion for approval.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Item 5 is the Valley Metro RPTA fiscal year 24 preliminary operating and capital budget. Back to you, Jessica, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Budget season is upon us all. I would like to ask Ken Kessler, our Chief Financial Officer, to provide an overview of our FY24 budget process. Mr. Kessler?
Thank you, Jessica. Chair, members of the committee, I want to provide you a high-level overview of the preliminary FY24 budget. Do want to mention we provided this information to the Financial Working Group last week for initial review, and we'll be going through more details of the budget next month with the Financial Working Group, this committee, and AFS as well. So just want to start off with some high-level baseline operations numbers for RPTA. And just want to point out here that these numbers are based on service that's operated by RPTA. So this isn't everything in the RPTA budget. There's other services in our budget that we fund, including Phoenix-operated services and other ADA paratransit operations from other member cities. Do want to point out on the estimate for the gross operating costs for fixed route bus operations for next year. We're likely to see an increase. We just got some information this week on fuel for the Tempe facility. The current forecast for the current year is up substantially over the budget and the previous forecast we had, and we're waiting to get the forecast for FY24 from Tempe staff later this week. So we'll update that as we go through the budget process. And along those lines, with that may delay slightly the delivery of the IGAs to the member cities that receive service from the East Valley bus operations. Here's the some baseline numbers for paratransit operations. We do forecast decreased trips, and therefore we're seeing a slight decrease in the cost and the fare revenue going into next fiscal year. I think it's touchy. And on the ride choice side of things, we see an increase here, increased trips forecasted. We have the new contract that Tom just talked about going into next fiscal year. And so here's the baseline numbers for the ride choice operation. And then just a overview, a visual overview of a breakdown of the use of funds and the total operating and capital budget for RPTA. You'd see that passenger services is the biggest component, the next followed by fiscal administration. And just to clarify what that is, that's the pass-throughs basically from RPTA to VMR. As a reminder, all staff for VMR and RPTA are RPTA employees. And so the employees that are putting forth efforts for VMR, those are initially incurred on the RPTA side, but pass through to VMR for reimbursement. And then the source of funds for operating capital here, you could see PTF, federal and member city contributions make up the largest portion of the total sources of funds for the operating and capital budgets. So looking at the budget, and this is the full budget here, including everything RPTA funds. So RPTA operated, Phoenix operated, other member city operated, ADA, et cetera. We do have overall increase of 17%. A large portion of that is driven by the rate increases that are normal in the contracts, as well as the board approved labor wage rate adjustments. So this is now going into a full year impact of those increases. Okay, jumped again. So just a brief overview of the source of funds on the operating budget. PTF, member city contributions, and federal funds making up the majority of the sources that fund the operating budget. On the capital side, use of funds here, we see a pretty flat, about 1% increase from current year to next fiscal year. The large component here making up the capital side of the RPTA is regional fleet replacement plan. And then on the source of funds for the capital program, federal funds and carry forward and reserves, that's basically a fund balance of Prop 400 funds, PTF, going to fund the capital budget. And as I mentioned, there's a number of pass-throughs from RPTA to mostly to VMR. In addition to that, we have the Arizona lottery funds that are dispersed to the member cities and Maricopa County. And then here's just a breakdown of those pass-through by the source of funds. And then lastly, just want to talk about the budget timeline. So we're here in March. As I mentioned, we had financial working group overview last week. We're going to move forward this month to the AFS tomorrow and the board with this sort of high-level budget information for information. And then we're going to go into more details in April, going through the detailed initiatives with AFS and the financial working group. And then on to throughout the spring with a June planned board adoption of the operating and capital budget for FY24. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ken. Any questions on the budget item?
Chair, this is Kevin from Glendale. I have some.
Okay, Kevin, go ahead.
Thank you. And this may be a question for Jessica or Ken. The fare recovery is 4%. Now, I know nationally, having been involved with several different transit agencies, that number's all over the board. But generally, as a rule of thumb, a target's around 25%. So I've got a couple of questions. When is the last time that Valley Metro had a fare increase on its routes, fixed routes?
Chair, Committee Member Phelps, the last fare increase in the region was March 1st of 2013.
Okay, so then my next question, maybe this is, we can open this up to the rest of our board members, but I'm going to say this in a little bit of jest, but can anybody name me a product or service that in 2013 cost identically a decade later? And I can't come up with, I really did put some thought into it. I tried to find a single product or service that is being charged the same amount of money a decade earlier and can't find it. So I guess I'd like to maybe, Chair, maybe open this up to the to other committee members. Maybe this is not something they're interested in, but I guess I would like to have an answer of why have we not pursued a reasonable fare recovery strategy, for this agency. I know there's issues around price elasticity and making sure ridership doesn't drop off, but almost every service and almost every product fights those same exact kinds of economic realities. But why are we so, what makes Valley Metro and transit service so unique that we would never want to, or not never, but certainly have not increased our fares for the last decade?
Jessica, did you want to respond?
I do. Well, I think Mr. Phelps might have been posing that
Yeah,
question to the
that
committee.
may be a question to the other committee members to see what comments they might have.
No.
Kevin, did you want to hear a response from staff, or did you just want to open that up to the committee?
For everyone, I would allow everyone the opportunity to provide some insight on this.
Okay, Jessica, why don't you start, and then we can go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Mr. Phelps, you are right to point out that there has not been evolution in the structure and pricing of our fares in some time. You're also right to point out that the fare recovery goal, it varies widely across transit organizations and tends to be a mixture of policy and as well as financial goals. At our last month board meeting in February, we actually had a fare study session. At the conclusion of that study session, board instructed staff to develop a plan for a fare system study that would look at how we're going to integrate our new fare collection modernization program. So we've already got the technology side of things down, if you will, but to also look at the structure and pricing and the different products that we're offering as transit fares. So staff is actually currently developing that scope of work and plans to be reporting back to our board, and certainly can report back to this body this spring with a planned course of action. It has been some time, too long, frankly, since Valley Metro conducted a fare system study. And a study like this typically precludes any new policy, including a change in pricing structure. Among the things we'll be looking at, even if we held our fare products constant, which I'm not suggesting that we should, I think we should evolve the products and passes that we're offering to our customers in the community. We still have to do some modeling and understand the relationship between ridership and fare so that we arrive at that optimal point of serving customers and then collecting revenues as an important source of our operating budget. So I don't know yet if it will be April or May before we'll be able to bring this item back to committee, but I can commit that it will be spring and we will have our action plan ready to share with the board and committee.
Mr. Chair, yeah, Jessica, thank you. And I recognize that that you have not been here for most of those 10 years while we did not raise fare policy. But I think this is important. I mean, we're seeing 17% increase in our fixed route. And I think most of our citizens all recognize that costs have gone up. And I just think, I hope we can put a little bit of energy and haste with our policymakers to really perhaps give the green light on a different policy philosophy for fares going forward. So that's the end of my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. And any other comments from committee members? All right, one question I had for you, Ken, on the portion of the increase that's related to the labor costs, the wage increases that were approved last year. I know there was a budget adjustment last year for that, but it was a mid-year adjustment, right? Is that why now we're accounting for the full year and you see more of an increase related to
Yeah,
that?
Mr. Chair, yes, that is correct.
Okay,
Yes. So in the current year, we basically have about a half a year of the impact of that. And then next year will be a full year impact.
okay, thank you. All right. I don't have
Mr.
any.
Chair,
Oh, go ahead.
this is Mary from Gilbert. I would just like to say that I appreciate Mr. Phelps' comments and the opportunity to look at the fares. I know that it's always a delicate balance, and I appreciate Jessica's response and the goal and the plan. If and when there's ever a possibility, some of those study session conversations obviously are most appropriate for the board, but I would welcome an opportunity for this body to also have an opportunity to engage in that dialogue and have it potentially in more of a study session like format, rather than just more of a report out, an opportunity to respond. I think some of that dialogue and understand and digging in a little bit more would be a fruitful exercise. And I appreciate Mr. Phelps' comments about wanting to see if there's an opportunity to address fare recovery and fares 10 years later. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's something that we can consider for future. All right, I heard someone else trying to chime in. Is there someone else that wanted to speak?
Mr. Chair, can I
Kevin,
witness
yes.
Kevin again? I guess I was wrong. The Costco hot dog is still $1.50. That came from our city manager in Tempe. Andrew, thank you for correcting me. So I will go on record as acknowledging that my premise was a little bit flawed.
Just a tiny bit, Kevin, thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, and so this item is for information discussion, no action here today. So if there are no other questions or comments for Ken, we can move on. Item 6, report on current events and suggested future agenda items. Anything else for future items? Hearing none. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, April 5th at 11 a.m. Once again, that adjourns the Transit Management Committee meeting. And then we'll next go into the Rail Management Committee, and I'll hand the gavel over to Andrew.
Thanks, Mario. Do you want to give folks a couple minutes to log off if they like? Okay. Okay. Good morning. We will go ahead and call the March 1st, 2023 Rail Management Committee meeting to order. First item is our consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of items 1A through 1E, although I understand that item 1E is being pulled from consideration today and will be brought back in April, correct? Okay. So at this point, unless there are any questions or any items that need to be pulled for separate discussion, I'll ask if there are any for items 1A through 1D. Okay. Hearing none, I'd request a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 1A through 1D.
I move approval. Right.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item 1 passes unanimously. Moving on to item 2, this is the fiscal year 2024 operating and capital budget information for Valley Metro Rail. And again, we'll turn it over to Medford Miller.
Thank you, Chair Ching and members of the committee. I'll again turn it over to Ken Kessler, CFO.
Thank you, Jessica, members of the committee. Again, this is similar to the RPTA presentation. Boy, I'm a little heavy fingered here on this button. There we go, one at a time. Providing a high-level overview of the preliminary FY24 budget for VMR. Provided for you here are just some of the key baseline operations figures, looking at a increase in the gross operating costs from 70 to 79 million. Fare revenues trending a little flat. We although it's the same recovery rate, we forecast a little higher revenues for next year. Currently in the fiscal year 23, we are trending a little bit above the 5 million budget. So we feel comfortable that that $5.8 million forecasted for next year is still pretty conservative. And similar metrics provided for the Tempe streetcar operations. Here we see, again, similar conservative numbers for fare recovery. The extremely low number in the current year is because the current plan is for the free fares to go through May. So most of this current fiscal year, there are no fares being collected on streetcar, and the plan for next year to be collecting fares. The project development side of the house, just wanted to touch on a few things. There's a number of the projects you see here on the screen that are in development. So we've got a budget next year to continue those activities, and then as well as administration and system support. Just a high-level overview of the use of funds in a visual chart here. The capital activities make up the primary use of funds for the total operating plus capital budget, mainly due to the two major capital projects underway, the downtown, the Tempe, or the South Central Extension Downtown Hub and the Northwest Phase 2 Light Rail Extension projects. And then the sources of funds that are funding our preliminary budget for next year, largely made up of member city contributions, followed by federal funds. Oops, I don't know what happened there. Stephanie, can you help me out? Thank you. Clicker's very sensitive to me. So the use of funds on the operating budget, the total operating budget, we broke it down here by the service type, showing light rail, O&M plus security. Then we show streetcar, O&M and security, and then future project development and our agency operating budget. Primary driver for the increase in the rail subtotal there is the Northwest Extension Phase 2 coming on line with revenue service in the middle of next year. Again, the contract rate increases, sort of the normal built into the contracts, plus the board approved wage rate increases, the full year effect of that, as well as some maintenance items included in the rail budget. And then on the streetcar budget for next year, again, there's some spare parts and things like that that have been added to ensure that maintenance coverage is adequate. Okay, on the sources of funds that fund the operating budget, primarily here, member city contributions and public transportation funds fund the majority of the budget. On the capital side, again, got the major capital projects going on there, South Central, Northwest, with Tempe streetcar wrapping up with just a small dollar amount in next year's budget. And then capital extension starting to ramp up as that project advances. And then again here, the source of funds in the capital side, largely federal and member city contributions funding the capital budget for VMR. And then here, just the same timeline that I previewed in the RPTA budget presentation. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Okay. Hearing no questions, this item is for information only. So thank you. We will close item 2. We will now move on to item 3, report on current events and suggested future agenda items. Are there any reports or current events, or if there are any agenda items for future meetings? Okay. Hearing none, our next meeting will be Wednesday, April 5th, 2023 at 11 a.m. Thank you. We're adjourned.